Welcome to Nitpicking Nerds, and it's time to talk about some rules.
Some confusing rules.
I'm your host, Joe Cherries.
I'm your host, BZ, and that makes us the Nitpicking Nerds. We got videos for you every single day. So if you want to support the channel, best way to do it is through patreon.com, which there's a link in the description for.
Yes, you can be a scrolling patron like the people scrolling here, and you can get a special shout out like our boy, Jim. Jim, thank you so much for the support. We appreciate you.
You don't tug on Superman's cape. You don't mess with Jim.
There's more to that, but yes, you do not mess around with Jim. Yes, do not mess around.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. It's not a good idea. Jim is BA.
You know what is a good idea?
No.
Supporting us on TCG Player indirectly by buying the cards you were going to buy anyway, which triggers an ability from TCG Player to just give us money from their own pockets.
We seriously appreciate that so much. Seriously, you use the link, you spend no extra money, and we get some money. So we appreciate that. You can
Seriously.
Yes. You can do the exact same thing with Dragon Shield. Go to their EU or US web shops, buy the best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
And once you get those sleeves sent to your house, you'll realize, wow, these are amazing. I'm really glad I bought them. I hope the Nitpicking Nerds were supported. And guess what? You started with our link, so we were.
Right. And now is your time to put the time codes where you think the Maraschiello ad's going to be, because you're going to inevitably be wrong, and I will correct you.
Yes, because this channel is, of course, sponsored by Maraschiello, and we will be surprising you with an ad somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle. And happy birthday to everyone whose birthday is today as our final little announcement.
Oh, we're done. All right, let's get into this
That was
video.
weird.
No, it wasn't. I was out of breath because we had done so many.
So these are some confusing rules interactions either we've come across IRL or we've noticed that are kind of infamous for just being ridiculously confusing. And we're going to run through them. Just a little fun. And then if you see this in the future, you'll know what to do.
Yes, there's a lot of unique and silly interactions here that while doing research for this video, I did not know some of them. I knew some of them, and I've seen a lot of them in person, but
some of these will never happen.
Some of these, yes, you're unlikely to see some of these happen. So let's hop right into it. BZ, the first two relate to one of BZ's decks. He has an Imperial Archangel deck. Now, yeah, the other day, I attacked him to kill the Angel. Imperial Archangel says whenever damage would be dealt to BZ, well, the controller of Imperial Archangel, instead deal it to the Angel. Now I sent 30 damage at BZ. I'm like, boom, take it. The Angel's dead. And BZ's like, no, I'll go get one and clone it. And because 30 damage is all dealt at once, he chooses where it gets redirected to. It's only one of them, and only one of them dies.
Yes, I get to keep the other Angel. It was pretty sweet. I guess it works for Pariah, I think, is a similar type. And then there's a Palace Sentinel. It's a 2/7 that gives you the monarchy.
Yes.
They have
so
the same text.
What actually matters about this deck is it's a replacement effect. And the player affected by the replacement effect, if there are two replacement effects, chooses which one they would like. So say that you get to choose which, see you want the real one or there's a clone of Imperial Archangel and there's an Imperial Archangel. You could choose which one you would want to take all the damage.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Another example would be Rest in Peace Stealthy Voidwalker, perhaps?
Yes, it would be because they are both replacement effects. They're both going to lead to exile, but one leads to exile with a void counter, which you would obviously not want.
Not sure why you have both and you played both, but that's beside the point.
It could be this is Commander, right? We talk about Commander here. Somebody could have a Rest in Peace, another player could have a Stealthy Voidwalker. That seems more plausible. This actually required a judge call from us when we were up in Montreal playing some games because we were not positive how it worked.
It was a little confusing, I mean, just as confusing as what I just said.
Yes, BZ. How about the next one? The next one is also something that comes from your Imperial Archangel deck.
Yeah, so I like to enchant that thing and put auras on it, but a lot of people will try to tell me that I can't do it, when actually you definitely can. You can enchant shroud creatures and, more importantly, what's probably more relevant for you, hexproof creatures your opponents control with auras, as long as you skip the part where you cast the aura. The only time that you're targeting a creature with an aura is when you cast it. It's on the stack. If it's reanimated, flickered, or a clone enters as an aura, they all just go attached to something. You do not target them. You can do whatever you want with it.
Yes, essentially an aura is never not attached if it's on the battlefield. So if you cast, like you said, let's just say Chemist Transformation, it targets the creature it's going to, and then when it resolves attached to that creature. But if you Sun Titan to return Chemist Transformation directly to the battlefield, it skips that. it skips the targeting, meaning you can choose any creature on the battlefield regardless of if it has, hexproof.
Shroud,
or if
whatever.
it has Shroud. It doesn't matter. You skip that and you can just put this on it.
Pretty sweet little loophole there. I think it's also why Animate Dead is just a brick of text, because it can't be an aura that's got nothing on it, nothing under it, so it like has to turn into a thing and then it all happens at once. It's really weird.
It's really weird. It has to change from an enchant creature in your graveyard to an enchant creature.
Because it can't be in play enchanting nothing.
Yeah, it can't be an enchant creature in graveyard, enchanting creature on the battlefield. So that's a change. That card is so confusing. Up next is green-white Sylvala, and specifically her tap mana ability is really, really weird, because what you do is you parlay. Tap, everyone reveals the top card of their library. For each non-land revealed this way, you make a nice spicy green mana. So, let's say we want to cast a spell. We only have 1 mana though. Just 1 mana? Alright, how are we going to do this? We want to cast a 3-drop. So we go, alright, tap my 1 green, and now I try and cast this 3-drop. I need 2 more mana. I'm going to use Sylvala also while casting this spell. Here's how it's going to happen. We're going to put that spell onto the stack. We're going to do the parlay with Sylvala. We're going to look, dang, a lot of lands, only 1 green mana here. That's not enough to cast this spell. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do the parlay. That stays.
Everybody draws a card.
Everyone draws a card. That's what the parlay does. It puts everyone's cards, they draw, put it in their hand. We reverse all other mana abilities, so that 1 green mana we put in, we untap that land. Usually all mana abilities are reversed when we find out we don't have enough mana to cast it, but Sylvala does not get reversed because it has such a unique effect and it forces you to not be able to reverse it. So we end up with tapped Sylvala, 1 mana in our mana pool, because that's what Sylvala made. It is so confusing.
And then the spell's in your hand, never cast.
It was
not uncast.
Yeah, exactly. It's back in your hand. The game rewinded to the state before you cast it, except for Sylvala, who remains tapped.
Super bizarre. Probably won't happen much. I mean, I guess in any Sylvala deck it could easily happen, right? This doesn't even actually feel like in regular Commander, not very often. But in Sylvala decks, this feels like it could happen all the time.
Well, here's the thing about it. People don't play like this.
No, you activate Sylvala first.
Yeah, people don't. It seems like a disadvantage, right? Because now you're telling people what's in your hand. You would just activate Sylvala, see what mana you get, and then see what you can cast. That's how you're actually going to do this. It seems like a disadvantage to tell your opponents what you're playing, so you can just activate the mana ability, put mana in your mana pool, and then use the mana as you see fit. But if you wanted to do it this weird way, you could, because it's how it works.
You could, and it's bizarre. Next is number 4, and it's Humility, but not paired with the card you might think. Humility gives all creatures, they lose all their abilities, and they're 1/1s. And we're talking about Magus of the Moon with it, which is a 2/2 that says all non-basic lands are mountains. Now you may be wondering, where's Opalescence? That's actually a whole new level of confusing that cares about layers, and there's definitely the words layer 6B, 7B, like nonsense. We might do a whole short about it, but really don't feel like confusing everybody right now for no reason.
This one's a little bit less confusing here, but it still involves layers, and it's still really, really weird. So if we have both of these cards out, we're going to have a Magus of the Moon that is a 1/1 with no abilities, but also all non-basic lands are mountains. Yep, it's because of layers, and if you want to know why, I don't know why. Ask a judge; they will tell you, because layers are one of the weirdest and I think silliest things in Magic.
So it doesn't matter what order you play them in?
I do not believe so, and I would love if this one could be like, maybe I'm wrong, but from what I was reading, it looks like it doesn't matter which order you play them in. You're just going to have Magus of the Moon's ability applying to all non-basic lands.
And then if you kill the Magus, they're no longer mountains?
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
It's really confusing. It's super weird because of how layers apply.
All right. Number 5, we have a Lich's Mirror, which gives you something to do. Instead of losing the game, you shuffle everything you own in, and your life total becomes 20, blah, blah, blah. So you're left with like no permanence. Terrible card. But if you don't own it, and so let's say someone gives you a Lich's Mirror and then infects you to 10 poison counters, Lich's Mirror couldn't possibly interact with poison counters because they weren't around yet. So you do the thing, you shuffle all permanents you own in, and then your life total becomes 20. You still have 10 poison counters, and you still own the Lich's Mirror because it's not yours, and you can't shuffle it in. You don't own it. So you just end the game.
The most common way to lose the game is through damage, milling, or obviously door to nothingness. 3 most common ways to lose the game in all of Magic. So, when those happen, you replace it and you just end up shuffling, drawing a new hand, you're at 20. But if you have something that just keeps you losing over and over again, like poison counters
or commander
damage, which doesn't actually matter, so you're going to do you're replacing the effect. Oh, the effect's replaced. I lost the game. But no, I didn't. I did this. But I'm going to shuffle everything in. Not the Lich's Mirror, because I don't own the stupid Lich's Mirror. The Lich's Mirror will stay on my side of the battlefield because I don't own it.
So yeah, the game, actually happens
infinite loop.
It's a state trigger, which cares about a certain condition being met. So it's constantly checking, and then once the condition's met, it triggers, and then it doesn't trigger again while it's on the stack. Once it resolves, if the condition's still met, it just triggers again. You're always going to be losing the game or about to lose the game whenever we check state-based actions, and this will always replace it with what is essentially nothing. And the game glitches out, and you can't play anything else because there's deterministic loops that can't be stopped.
Yeah, it literally cannot be stopped. It's really, really silly, honestly, because I don't know if there is a way to stop this without removing the mirror.
Yeah, you have no permanence in play, so good luck.
Well, so the mirror, it's funny because if you're a little confused here, poison says the rules with poison, if you have 10 poison counters, you lose the game. Now, this will obviously happen anytime state-based actions are checked. So if you have 10 poison counters and state-based actions are checked, you lose the game. So that'll keep happening over and over and over again.
State triggers can cause this a lot. 2 other examples that we talked about in a short. Equipping Bronze Bombshell with Assault Suit. You give it away, and its state trigger says sacrifice it, but you can't. So it's never going to stop trying. And Garrick Relentless, if you Clever Impersonator it and then shoot a 2/2, it will try to transform forever and never can because nothing will happen. It'll keep triggering.
Yeah, exactly. And these cause draws. That's what happens here.
Yep.
The game ends in a draw because nothing can happen because the game is stuck.
Hilarious.
The game is literally stuck trying to do something over and over and over again, so the game ends.
I love it. It's literally just like an IRL glitch in the game.
It's hilarious, yeah. Game's draw. It's over.
How about number 6?
Next is a confusing one that I had to look up to make sure it was true. It's Reign of Gore, which says, it's red or black, and whenever a spell or ability causes a player to gain life instead, they lose that much life. Okay, that's pretty good. But it doesn't work against specifically lifelink, which is an ability.
I got a Saracen coming at you for 6, but you got Reign of Gore.
But you got Reign of Gore, so you're not going to gain 6 life, right? No, actually, because it's dealt through combat and lifelink is really weird, he's just going to gain 6 life. It's so peculiar, and it's really confusing wording-wise because it says or a spell or ability in lifelink, without a doubt, is an ability.
Yeah.
It is an ability, but it doesn't matter because it doesn't apply to lifelink.
I think this one probably comes up a lot because Reign of Gore is a card people might play, and lifelink is on a bunch of random creatures, so this could happen all the time. You might have done this one wrong.
Yeah.
How could you possibly have known?
I mean, I didn't know until literally today. Yeah. I would assume that an ability, lifelink, would count toward the spell or ability clause, but it actually doesn't.
So I would recommend looking a little bit more into that one to just see what their reasoning is.
I love this next one. This next one is something to do with Pithing Needle, whatever you want to call it, and Phyrexian Revoker, but we're going to use Phyrexian Revoker in our example.
Because he's got little googly eyes.
He's got little googly eyes. So Phyrexian Revoker says when it enters the battlefield, you can name a non-land card. Now, something about this is you can only name cards that are legal in the format.
That exist, yeah.
And they have to exist. Obviously have to exist. So if someone has Treasure Token isn't something you can name because that's just not a card in Magic. That is a token.
But if there was a card in Magic named Treasure Token would lose abilities.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. If there was. And that's where this gets fun. Because there are 2 cards. There is Landwehr Mentor, which taps to make creatures named Landwehr Elves. And there's Freylease, who pluses to make what are basically Landwehr Elves, but slightly different. They're little elves that tap for 1 green mana. Both basically Landwehr Elves.
The exact same thing, except for the name.
Exactly. So, Phyrexian Revoker can name the Landwehr Elves because Landwehr Elves is a real card. And that'll shut off the abilities of the tokens. But it won't shut off the ability of Freylease's thing, which is basically the exact same thing, but not named Land Werewolf.
Yeah, try that one out at home. That's like a 3-card combo, and then someone else has to be playing Fraley's.
It's just so silly. I mean, it doesn't even really matter. It's never going to come up.
Still, it's funny. They actually
this mattered. Yes, this mattered a lot, which is so good.
They had to change the name of the blood tokens. It was originally just blood. You create a blood, but they had to change it to blood token because there's a split card, a fuse card from Dragon's Maze called Flesh Blood. So you could have named blood and shut down all blood tokens, and it's just like they didn't want that nonsense.
Yeah, you did not want it. I don't think it was a problem in standard, but it was in eternal formats where Flesh Blood was a legal magic card.
They just didn't want that headache, and I can respect that.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
This one is actually not confusing. I don't know how it's on here.
Yeah, it's actually the least confusing on the whole list, but it is really cool. It's Moxfield.com, which is the best deck building website. Me and BZ use it for every single one of our decks. Literally just updated my whole Henzi Toolbox Tour deck. I was going through, I was taking out the budget cards, I was adding the new ones, and now I've got a nice deck. You can take a look at that on Moxfield. Look, it's right here. It's in front of your face. You can see it, and now I'm showing you Moxfield.com, baby.
Yeah, you can tag all your cards. So if you want to separate ramp, card draw, removal, and then have maybe a few overlaps, you can do that. But then you can also take new cards, click and drag them just up, and you'll see what tags groupings there are, and you can just put it in there without even having to like type something in. It's just so freaking easy, so much unlike everything on this list.
Yes, it's the most intuitive website. It is so easy to use. You won't, if you know Magic cards, basically that's all you have to do, because now you go to the site and you're building decks. It'll take you 5 minutes once you sign up.
It's like riding a bike, but when you start not knowing how, you still never forget.
Yeah, you already know how to do it if you know how to play Magic.
See, that's as confusing as everything we're going to get to.
All right, so here we go. Next one. Revealing face-down cards. You have to do this when the game ends. So if you have a face-down card, if it's a morph, if it's a manifest, or if it's anything else, you have to reveal it, which is hilarious to me. Like, you wouldn't think you would have to reveal your face-down cards, but you absolutely do, because they have to be made sure that they were legal cards. Because actually, if for some reason, let's just say like in competitive REL, your face down card was something illegal in the format, you would probably just lose the game, I imagine.
Yeah, I think it used to be a game loss, and maybe they made it something a little bit less, but it's really bad. You do not want to do it. It's a pretty hefty penalty for doing that, because you have to like really some kind of horrendous blunder or like really intentional cheating.
Yes, exactly. So you have to reveal all face-down cards. Also, if they're bounced to your hand, say that you play a morph, then somebody unsummons it, you have to reveal the morph, because everyone needs to know that it was actually a morph and you weren't cheating.
Similar to how whenever you search for a card with any characteristic at all, you have to reveal it.
Yes, exactly. So what's funny about face-down cards to me is that all face-down cards, regardless of how they got turned face-down, must be revealed at the end of a game.
So like if you Ixodron?
Yes. So if you Ixodron, you have to reveal all those cards at the end of the game, or every time they get bounced, which is hilarious.
Here's my real question. What's the penalty in Commander for not doing this?
In Commander, nothing, because it's a casual format and nobody's ever going to care.
Yeah, what? We should make it like you got to put a quarter in the morph jar or something.
I would just be like, hey, you have to reveal that to me, and they'd probably be like, oh, really? And I'd be like, yeah, and then they'd probably show me, and that'd be it.
Yeah, unless they're like, screw you, and then I'd be like, you don't seem like a nice person.
Speaking of morph, though, there's another one. Morph is not an activated ability, but rather a special game action, meaning that you can flip up through something like split second. Split seconds and spells or abilities can't be done during this.
But special game actions, of course, can.
Of course, special game actions can be done.
The same is true, actually, if somebody casts a Croson Grip. You can respond by paying 2 mana into Leonin Arbiter so that you can shuffle your library this turn.
Oh, yeah. It's so silly. There's no reason to do that, but you can. But there actually is a reason. There is a, Stratus Dancer? Something like that.
The counterspell morph?
The counterspell morph. You just flip it up. It actually can counter a, Croson Grip. So if someone uses a Croson Grip, flip up your Stratus Dancer, because I'm using my special game action to flip it upward. It's so peculiar.
As if Croson Grip needed any other hits against it.
Yeah, it's if it needed to be weirder. So it's just strange. I love that it's named too. Like, it's not an ability. It's a special game action.
I also like that morphs, while we're here, we're just talking about morphs, with something like Guardian Project, they will draw you a card. because they don't all have the same name as nothing. They don't have a name.
They don't have any name.
It's not like their names are all nothing. They don't have a name, and the game considers that an original
even if you
thing.
have 10 morphs,
Yeah.
they all have no name.
So nothing shares a name.
So they don't share a name. If you have no name and someone else has no name, you don't share a name. You just both have no name.
Yeah, you both have no name. So that's little 9.5 bonus. Let's go to number 10. This is the one that will just never happen, but it's fun. +1/+1 and -1/-1 counters cancel each other. Your creature won't have both because it's impossible to keep track of. So if you've got a persist creature that undies, that's when they cancel out and you can start going infinite. But +2/+2 counters given by Baron Sangir, and -2/-2 counters given by Ebony Praetor won't cancel out.
Yes. So these put them on each other. So this is not a real situation that's coming up. Ebony Praetor is going to put counters on a -1, -2 counters on itself. Baron Sangir is going to put +2/+2 counters on himself.
But you have nesting grounds.
But we have nesting grounds, so we can move any counter we want from one to the other. So we're going to move the +2/+2 counter over to our Ebony Praetor. Good luck keeping track of that because they don't cancel out, and now you have a +2/+2 counter and a -2/-2 counter.
And the power toughness is the same.
Yes, or you could have 7 -2/-2 counters and 6 +2/+2 counters.
Right, because we have Peer out also.
Yeah, so it's so weird. It's oh my god, I love this interaction. It doesn't matter really because essentially we're avoiding this. We don't in Magic the Gathering. We're not using +1/+1 counters. Or we are using +1/+1 counters. We're not using any other modification plus counters anymore. We used to in the past.
We never will.
And there used to be like -0/-2 and +0/+2. I think like Frankenstein's Monster did that.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't cancel out either.
Yeah.
So
But
-1.
no need to worry.
Yeah, -1 and +1 counters are the only ones that cancel out. And realistically, they're the only ones that matter because they're the only ones you're going to see. But it is hilarious that if for some reason that interaction came up, they just have to sit there and you have to keep track of it because what if it cares about let's just say modified creature
number of counters?
Because let's just say if I have a +1/+1 counter on my creature and you Yawgmoth -1/-1 counter, it has no counter. It's not modified anymore. But if I have my creature with a +2/+2 and a -2/-2, it's modified because it's actually got 2 counters on it.
The next one is all about combat and specifically the step after damage that remains in combat. Combat's got a bunch of little mini steps, and damage is the second last one, and like the end of combat step is sort of one where you can do things and your creatures are considered still attacking, such as activate reconnaissance. It untaps an attacking creature and removes them from combat. Let's say you just hit somebody with 5/1/1s, they just take it all. You can say, all right, still in combat, I'll just untap all of them.
Yeah, so Reconnaissance has an extra bonus mode of essentially giving all of your creatures vigilance. You attack him with everything, and now usually the idea of this card is like, hey, they blocked my stuff. I'll remove the ones that are blocked from combat. But instead, it's just bonus mode. Now, after damage, still in combat, I'll untap all of my creatures. Now, this is, like you said, the end of combat phase, which is actually where your creatures are still considered attacking, actually applies to another thing, which is ninjutsu. Now, obviously, there's a couple of cool things I wanted to mention with ninjutsu. If you attack with a creature and get in, all right, it's unblocked. Before damage, you can ninjutsu. That's the normal thing so that you hit with a ninjutsu creature because they all have damage triggers. Like, that's the idea. That's what you want to do. But there's 2 things that are cool. 1, first strike. If you attack with a first strike creature, you can hit, do first strike damage. Then, before the next damage, ninjutsu out, put it in, and then hit with my ninja, which I think is great.
That's just a random fun fact about ninjutsu, right?
Well, that's a fun fact about ninjutsu. It's also a rules thing. Like,
Yeah.
people might not know that you can get damage in with a first striker and then ninjutsu. And then, after that, we're on our end step. I think specifically of, like, Umezawa, who can put in something with a static effect. I can hit with my creature, and then ninjutsu and my biggest fatty that, has a damage trigger. Then, because of Umezawa, who gets everything, I want to put in, what's something with a great static effect?
Jingataxius.
But it's less damage than the other guy, but I could only really put it in. So I do more ninjas, and now I put Jingataxius in after damage is dealt, but before combat ended.
Got all that? I don't know if you could. I don't know if you could have used more words to describe that. I feel like.
I think I did it pretty well.
Let us know how well Joe did in the comments.
I think I did well.
Next, we got it's just its own thing. Trinisphere.
It literally is its own thing because Trinisphere is amazingly hilarious. There is a whole thing for applying cost, and I believe you do like additions, like okay, we add the cost up total that it's going to cost like any. So if something like Thalia is taxing, that gets added first, and then if something like Helm of Awakening is reducing, we do that after. That's the next thing. And then after all these reductions and all that stuff is applied, we're then going to go to the Trinisphere spot.
Which might add mana.
Which it will force the spell, no matter what it is, to be 3 mana.
Assuming it's less than 3.
Yes. So if it costs more than 3, obviously it doesn't matter. Everything has to be, you have to pay a minimum of 3 for everything while Trinisphere is on the battlefield. Meaning that at the end of everything, after you've calculated it all, if you got to 1, nope, you're paying 3.
That's Trinisphere for you. It's literally its own step when you calculate stuff. Don't play Trinisphere because it's just too hard to think. It's just impossible.
It's horrible in Commander. Like, this is not a card you're going to see in Commander. Because
well, it's kind of horrible to play against, probably.
I mean, you're probably right. It probably is horrible to play against. It's also not, like I said, in maybe CDH, it's a good card, but it's definitely not in casual Commander.
Yeah, it's only okay. 13. This is the 13th one, of course.
I absolutely love this one. All right, number 13. As I said, the numbers matter a lot here. We have a funny one. So we're going to be searching our library. Let's just start with a fetch land. Obviously, we got fetch lands in our deck. We fetch. And now we actually have a ton of mana laying around. We have 7 mana, but we only have 1 green. So when we find our Playing Glacial Worm, we're like, oh no, I only have 1 green mana. I can't cast my Playing Glacial Worm, which says it can be cast while you're searching your library. So in order to make my other green mana for this Playing Glacial Worm, I'm going to use Chromatic Sphere, which is a mana ability to filter one of my other mana into green mana. I have double green. I can cast my Playing Glacial Worm now. But wait a minute. Chromatic Sphere's mana ability says on it that we have to draw a card.
But our deck's in our hand.
But our deck is in our hand. So you reach for your deck. Oh no, it's actually in this hand. And I'm casting Playing Glacial Worm, and I'm doing the Chromatic Sphere. You could not have changed your deck order. When you search your deck, the order doesn't change until you shuffle your library. So you will just draw the top card of your deck.
That you've already seen.
Which is just absolutely hilarious and funky.
I would assume if you mess up the order, you just don't get to draw.
I think there's probably ways to fix it. You probably have to shuffle your library and get a random card. I imagine that'd be a warning in a real event. I imagine in the competitive Glacial Worm scene
with Chromatic Sphere.
Yeah, but I imagine in EDH nobody's gonna care if you messed up your library. Just be like shuffle and draw. But
basically, you can draw a card while you search your library.
Yes, while searching your library, you get to draw a card, and this is within the rules of Magic. You're not cheating. You're just following the rules, and you've drawn a card in the middle of searching your library, which is great. Just like Playing Glacial Worm gets put on the stack while searching your library.
Yes, of course. So what a not miserable at all card. I know when you combine like Playing Glacial Worm and Sylvala, things get weird too, but we're not going to get into that right now. Let's go to number 14. This is just a rule. This is just a whole rule. If a player would win the game and lose the game simultaneously, they lose instead. So losing the game trumps winning the game if they're both happening right at the same time.
Which is absolutely 100% hilarious. I don't believe in Magic currently. There's any way to do this. Though the last time I heard this, and talked to somebody about this, it was probably a few years ago. So something could have been added. If you know a way that this can happen, I'd love to know. But it's just hilarious. Like, if you win and you lose at the same time, you just lose, which is just hilarious.
Can't trumps can in this instance.
It does, yeah, and that's just a simple rule.
Short and sweet. This one's not simple. It's Goblin Test Pilot, which is going to try to deal 2 damage to a creature at random, and Suspension Field, which makes activated abilities cost 2 more.
Now, this goes back to how do you activate an ability? Well, targets have to be selected as one of the first parts before you pay any cost for it or additional cost. So what actually happens with Goblin Test Pilot, and now this is one that you will get called for slow play on. There's no chance.
Well, let's get to what happens.
You activate the Goblin Test Pilot. We got to find out the random thing. So we roll the dice. We see what we're targeting, and then we have to pay the cost for Suspension Field. So we see what target we get, and we go, nah, I don't like that target, so I won't pay. So we reverse to the game state again, like Sylvala. Reverse the game state to before I activated Goblin Test Pilot, so it has no targets. I can activate it again, and I can pick the target. Now, this is non-deterministic and will 100% in a real competitive setting get you called for slow play because you can't actually always get the target you want. But it is super silly and a fun interaction.
Right. So with, let's say, Prodigal Sorcerer and no mana untapped with Suspension Field, you tap it and you target a 1/1, but then it costs 2 more and you can't pay it, so it just untaps?
Yep, exactly. That's exactly what would happen.
So if you have Prodigal Sorcerer and no mana and you tap to try to deal 1 damage to target 1/1, Suspension Field says, nope, you have to add 2 mana to that, and you say, I can't. So the game reverses it, and it's like you never tapped the sorcerer.
Yes, exactly. It reverses to the state before the sorcerer was tapped.
So even if you had a trigger, like that one quest, that cares about creatures tapping, it doesn't work.
It doesn't. Well, it would only work if you had finished doing it, which you didn't actually tap the creature.
Takesies backsies.
It's literally it's the game does actually force takesies backsies at some points.
Yeah. So Suspension Field, you maybe get what? Like you get 3 tries at it before you're slow playing.
You're
Only
gonna
a few.
Yeah, I mean this isn't a real thing. Again, Goblin Test play that's awful. Suspension Shield sees very little play, so it's not something that's gonna come up. But as far as I can tell, this should definitely be a slow play call. So BZ, give him a video.
Well, top 10s, I believe, are something we do. And we actually just recently did the top 10 combo cards.
Yeah, so why don't you go check those out? Peace out, Tribe Scout.